Her true story from Alaska. My son slapped me and said, "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." After my husband's funeral, so I did, and took the mortgage with me. By morning, the locks worked, but the bank didn't. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." The words hit harder than the slap that followed. My son's hand cracked across my face with a force I never imagined he was capable of. Not physically, and certainly not emotionally, not toward me. But there it was, in the living room, not 5 feet from the casket where his father still lay, surrounded by wilting lilies and the low murmur of mourning relatives. My face burned, not just from the impact, but from the betrayal. I said it clearly, didn't I? "Get out," he seethed, his voice no longer recognizable. It was cold, calculated. Behind him stood his wife, arms crossed, chin tilted up, a slight smirk playing on her lips. She had always thought the house was hers. She had always treated me like a temporary guest in my own home. I had given birth to this boy. I had held his hand when he cried over broken toys, over scraped knees, over his first heartbreak. I had fought with the school principal when he was wrongly blamed for something in 5th grade. I had worked double shifts to pay for his tuition when his father's job was cut. I had done all of it without expecting a single thank you. Now he was throwing me out. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The shock had built a wall inside me so thick that no tear could escape. I looked him straight in the eyes. He couldn't hold the stare for long, but I could, because I wasn't just a grieving widow or a disrespected mother in that moment. I was something steadier, something older, something he had underestimated. I turned. I didn't say a word. My suitcase was still in the corner of the hallway, barely unpacked from the hospital visit a week ago, my husband's final stay. I pulled it toward the door, my steps quiet on the hardwood floor we'd laid down together 37 years ago. I didn't take everything, not my photo albums, not the ceramic angel from my mother, not even my favorite quilt, but I did take something they'd regret losing. I took the mortgage. The cold air slapped me again as I stepped outside, but it was kinder than my own son's hand. The sky was gray, and snow had just begun to fall in soft, drifting flakes. It clung to the folds of my black coat, but I didn't brush it away. It made me feel real, alive. I walked down the driveway, past the car my husband and I had paid off together, past the roses we planted on our 20th anniversary, past the wind chimes that used to sing when Andrew came home from school. No one followed me. No one stopped me, not even him. At the corner, I pulled out my phone and called for a taxi. While I waited, I sat on the bench outside the gas station. The teenage clerk inside peered through the window and came out. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked. I had baked him cookies one Christmas, years ago. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just waiting for a ride. Do you want to wait inside where it's warm?" I nodded. He didn't ask more. He didn't stare at the bruising that was already blooming across my cheek. The motel room smelled of bleach and sadness, but the heater worked and the bed was clean. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She offered me a cup of tea and a blanket. I declined both. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I could still feel the sting, not from the slap, but from his words. "This isn't your home anymore." I had scrubbed every inch of that house, paid half of it, cooked in it, prayed in it, fought for it. It wasn't a house. It was a life. And now I was told to leave it behind like it was a suitcase. But I hadn't told them everything. I hadn't told them that the mortgage wasn't just in my late husband's name. I hadn't told them that I was still the co-signier, the co-owner, the one whose name sat right there on the deed and the loan. Because my husband had known. He had known what could happen. And in one of our last conversations, he had said something I thought I'd never need to remember. "If I go first," he said, his voice shaky, "don't tell Andrew about the documents. Not unless he hurts you." I had placed those documents in a safe deposit box at the bank, along with something else. A letter he wrote, a backup will, and a clause that would change everything. The next morning, I made my call, not to Andrew, to the bank. I requested that the automatic mortgage payments be stopped. I gave them my name, my ID, the account number. They verified it. "You're listed as a co-owner and co-borrower, ma'am. You can do that," the banker said. I said thank you. Then I hung up. By noon, my son would find the locks changed, the door rekeyed. But by the end of the week, he'd get the real shock when the bank called. and I would be far away by then, not hiding, just quiet. I had spent my whole life being quiet. Now it was my silence that would speak the loudest. That house didn't fall from the sky. It wasn't some gift. It was built, brick by brick, check by check, sacrifice by sacrifice. In 1987, when the snow fell heavier than usual and heating bills nearly ruined us, my husband and I signed the first mortgage papers. I still remember the ink smudging slightly from my nervous hands. I had insisted on being a co-owner, not because I didn't trust him, but because his credit at the time was a mess. He had just closed a failed auto repair business, and the banks had turned him away more than once. But I had steady work. For over a decade, I'd been a medical clerk at the local clinic. Reliable income, clean credit. My name opened the door. My name got us the loan, and so my name went on the deed. We didn't talk about it much after that. He was proud but quiet about the arrangement. Still, when we planted our first hydrangeas in the front yard, he whispered, "We built this together, you and me." And we did. Every month we paid on time. Sometimes we skipped dinners out or Christmas presents. Sometimes we patched holes in the roof, ourselves, with duct tape and determination. But we never missed a payment. The bank sent statements in both our names. The mailbox always knew we were equals. But when my husband fell ill in 2012, everything changed. Suddenly, the strong man who once lifted me over puddles now struggled to lift a coffee mug. Medical bills mounted. Insurance barely scratched the surface. He couldn't work anymore, and Social Security was slow and stingy, so I took on more hours at the clinic, switched to night shifts, learned how to stretch a week's groceries from 2 bags. I even cleaned houses on weekends, wearing gloves to hide my cracked knuckles. But I never complained. Not to him, and never to Andrew, because Andrew had just started his own family. He was trying to build something too. I didn't want to burden him. I told him we were doing just fine, even when I counted pennies to fill the gas tank. When he asked why I looked tired all the time, I smiled and blamed it on age. He never asked more, and maybe that was my mistake. Maybe if I had let him see truly somewhat I was doing, he might have respected me more. Or maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything at all. But I chose silence. I chose to protect him from the weight of what I carried. And now, years later, he threw me out of the very house my name had helped build. It wasn't just insulting. It was erasure. They thought it was theirs. They walked through its halls like kings and queens of something they didn't earn. His wife changed the curtains, repainted the living room, remodeled the kitchen, all without ever once asking me. She said it was her domain. I let her believe that. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted peace in my final years. I thought if I gave them space, they would give me respect. Instead, they gave me orders. I remember one evening, just a few months ago, I was dusting the bookshelf when she said, "You really should ask before touching things. We're trying to keep the aesthetic consistent." It was my bookshelf, my books. Even the shelf had been built by my husband's hands. I went back to my room, shut the door, and cried quietly for the first time in a long time. Not because of her words, but because I saw what was coming. She was rewriting the narrative, and Andrew let her. He started calling it their house in conversations, stopped asking for my opinion, treated me like an extended guest, tolerated but not welcomed. I watched it all, silently. I didn't push back. I didn't wave around documents or make scenes, but I never threw anything away. Every mortgage document, every payment slip, every copy of the deed, I kept them in a neat manila folder in my bottom drawer. And when my husband died, I took that folder and placed it in a safe deposit box at the bank, along with a backup copy of his will and a letter he left for me, just in case. I had protected Andrew his whole life, but I had protected myself too. Now when they slammed that door in my face, they thought they were finally in control. They didn't know the history. They didn't know the house wasn't just wood and drywall and paint. It was names on paper, and one of those names was still mine. A week before he died, my husband called me into the bedroom while Andrew and his wife were out buying groceries. He was lying in bed, thinner than I had ever seen him, the curve of his bones showing through his flannel pajama top. But his eyes were sharper than they'd been in weeks. "Come sit," he said, patting the edge of the mattress. I sat. He reached into the drawer beside the bed and pulled out a small brown envelope. "Don't open it now," he said, placing it in my hands. "And don't tell Andrew it exists. Not unless..." He trailed off, coughing. Not unless what? I asked gently. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, not unless he hurts you. I stared at him, confused. What do you mean, hurts me? I mean, he paused, collecting his breath. I've seen how he speaks to you sometimes, the way she treats you, and he lets her. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to talk about that, not with him in this condition. Not now. You're overthinking, I whispered. He's just stressed, but my husband shook his head. No. You've been too generous with your forgiveness. That's why I had the papers drafted. I had the lawyer include something, just in case, because if I go before you and they turn on you, I want you protected. I tightened my grip on the envelope. What's in here? A second will, a supplemental clause. It's notarized, it's legal. If Andrew ever insults, abuses, or evicts you from this home, he loses all claim. Every penny, every title, every right. My hands trembled. He continued, I didn't want it to come to that, but I needed to know that if I'm not around, you still have some control, some justice. I nodded, eyes burning. I leaned forward and kissed his forehead. Thank you, I said, voice breaking. But I hope I never have to use it. He smiled faintly. Me too. He died 5 days later. The funeral was simple, cold, quick. His friends came. Some old colleagues. Andrew barely said 2 words during the service. His wife made herself the center of attention, sobbing loudest, even though she'd only known him 10 years. I kept my silence. I clutched the folded flag and the last photograph we had taken together. And I held the unopened letter in my coat pocket. I went to the bank the next morning. The woman at the front desk recognized me. Her name tag read Melinda. Safe deposit box? She asked kindly. I nodded. Box 221? Under Eileen Carter? She verified my ID, handed me the key, and led me to the private room. I opened the box and placed the letter inside, along with the supplemental will, a USB stick with scanned mortgage documents, and a copy of our original title. I labeled it, in case of emergency. Then I locked it all away. I didn't want to think about it again. I didn't want to imagine a version of the world where my son would make me need it. But now that version had arrived. 3 days after the slap, I returned to the bank. Melinda wasn't there. A new clerk helped me, a young man who looked barely 20 but spoke with care. In need of access? He asked. Yes, I said. Box 221. He led me back to the same private room. When I opened the box, I hesitated. My hands didn't shake this time. I took out the letter first. The paper had yellowed slightly around the edges, but my husband's handwriting was still clear, steady, familiar. To my dearest Eileen, it began. I read it again, even though I had it memorized. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if you're reading this because Andrew did what I hope he never would, then I am sorry. But you must know this. You are not powerless. You are not invisible. This house was yours as much as mine. Your hands built it, your sacrifices paid for it, and no one, especially not our son, pays to erase that. A lump rose in my throat. There is a clause in the supplemental will. You know it. Use it if you must. Don't let guilt keep you silent. You've spent a lifetime being the glue for this family. Let this be the moment you stop holding it together for everyone else. He had signed it, dated it, October 14, 2020, just weeks before his last hospitalization. Below the letter, the supplemental will confirmed everything. It named me as primary executor, custodian of the estate, and included a very specific clause. In the event that my son, Andrew Carter, physically or verbally abuses my wife, Eileen Carter, or attempts to evict her from the family home, all inheritance rights under this will shall be null and void. The estate shall then transfer to a designated trust under Eileen's sole control. It was signed by 2 witnesses and notarized. Legal, ironclad. I sat there in the quiet of the bank's vault room for a long time, breathing deeply. I hadn't wanted this power, but they had forced my hand. They had forgotten something crucial. Just because I had been quiet didn't mean I had been careless. I returned the documents to the box, took out the USB, and slid it into my purse. I would send the files to the lawyer later today, along with the recording I'd made the night of the slap, because that too I had preserved.